Hello, today we're going to be looking at the Chemistry C3 June 2014 paper. So for the first question, it says, ethanol is present in alcoholic drinks. Ethanol is produced by fermentation of carbohydrates. Complete the sentence by putting a cross in the box next to your answer. The conditions for fermentation are, so the answer for this is B. It's add yeast of temperature about 35 degrees. We need this because we need to keep about 35 degrees, but normally it's between 30 and 40. This is because fermentation happens the fastest between these temperatures. At lower temperature, such as 20, the reaction is too slow. And if it's too hot, such as 60, this means that the enzyme, the yeast, actually denatures and destroys, so it won't work. So the next part, it says ethanol, C2H5OH, is also produced by a reaction with ethene with steam. Write the balanced equation for this reaction. So for this, first of all, we know that ethene, we need to know that ethene is C2H4, and it's with steam, and steam is actually, we know it's water, so plus H2O. And that makes, as it tells us, C2H5OH. And we make sure this is balanced, and we can see that it is. So the next part of the question is ethanol is a member of the homologous series of the alcohols, and it says describe what it means. So first of all, we know it has the same general formula, it's the same functional group, and they have gradual variations in physical properties and the same chemical reactions. As I said before, I said like 4 different things, but you only need to get 2 marks. So for a phrase, you would just say the homologous series of the group of similar compounds with the same general formula of the compounds that differ by CH2. And you'd get all the marks. So the next question is, it says, draw the molecule of methanol. So we know that methanol is an alcohol, which relates to the question before. So how it looks like, we can see it has 1 carbon bond, so it's C. And then we see there is 3 hydrogens. So 1, 2, 3. And of course, we have to add the alcohol in the group. So O, H. And there, you get the 3 marks. So for this, we need to see, it says, when a bottle of wine is left unopened for days, the ethanol of the wine changes into ethanolic acid. So we should see, so if it's left in the open air, we know that oxygen is reacting with it, and this is simply called oxidation. Okay, the next part. So the next part of the question is saying, describe what you would see when a piece of magnesium ribbon is added to a dilute ethanoic acid. So the first mark, you would say fizzing or bubbling. And in the second mark, you can either talk about the solid disappearing, so the solid disappears, or the colour solution. Each single one of these, this is 1 mark, this is a second, and this is a third. So you'd only need to mention 2. But remember, you need to make them into full sentences so it can flow well. But these are the things that you really need to mention in this answer. So now moving on to question 2. It says the 3 solids A, B, and C are analysed. Solid A is potassium iodide, and a small amount of solid A is dissolved in water to form a solution. Describe a test that would show solution A contains iodide ions. So this means you need to actually really revise for this question, because if you haven't, you wouldn't know what to put. So for this question, you would need to say, to test for iodide ions, you'll need to use dilute nitric acid within silver nitrate solution. This will give a yellow precipitate. So we know that potassium iodide is a halide, because iodide is a halide. So different ones give different colours. So such as chloride gives white of silver chloride, bromide gives a cream of silver bromide, and then you've got iodide, which is yellow, which is explained here. And you always, for halides, you always give, you add a nitric acid. And you need to say these 2 points to get the 2 marks. So the next part of the question says, solid B is ammonium chloride. Describe the test to show that solid B contains ammonium ions. So this question is worth 3 marks, which is more than the second one, which means we need to add a bit of extra information. So to test for ammonium ions, you need to add it to sodium hydroxide. Then you can test the gases with damp litmus paper, which will turn blue if ammonium ions are present. So say this, you'll get 3 marks. Just to add, I want to say that you make sure you learn all the testing for ions, so you would need to know all the precipitates and all the different ways to get it, because it comes up every year. And if you do not learn this, you'll lose easily 5 marks. Solid C dissolved in water, so we know it's dissolved. So the second part says, when sodium hydroxide solution is added to the solution of C, a red-brown precipitate is formed. So this is what I said before. You have to remember all the tests. So it says, complete the sentence by putting a cross in the box next to your answer. This test shows the ions present in solid C is, now we have to know. And if you had revised, you would know it's ion Fe3, because it's red-brown. And if it was ion Fe2, it would be green. If it was copper, it would be blue. And sodium, all of these, you would have to eliminate them until you get the right one. And if you revised, you would know it's ion Fe3. So the last part, it says, sodium hydroxide solution can be used to test for aluminium ions and for calcium ions in a solution. Describe the results of these tests for the aluminium ions and the calcium ions. Explain how these results distinguish between the 2 ions. So it asks you to distinguish. So to get the 3 marks, you need to say how. So this is where it says, it says however. So both calcium and aluminium ions produce a white precipitate. However, aluminium dissolves with excess sodium hydroxide to form a colorless compound, whereas calcium does not. So saying this will get you the 3rd mark. So margarine is made from hydrogenation of liquid oil. Complete the sentence by putting a cross in the box next to your answer. So here we have another multiple choice. So hydrogenation of liquid oil is, and we can see the first one is hydrogen removed from the liquid oil, which is wrong. The next possible answer says liquid oil reacts with steam, and we know this is wrong as well. Double bonds are formed, which is wrong as well. So the last one we have is oil is changed into solid, which has to be the right answer. For part B, it talks about soaps. So it says soaps are made from boiling oils from concentrated solutions of alkalis. Which of the following would be suitable alkali to use in production of soaps? And they give you 4 different possibilities. And you need to know that it's actually sodium hydroxide. So the next part of the question, it shows you a soap anion. So it says, explain how the soap anion removes the grease marks from the clothes washing with water. So to get the 2 marks, we need to say the soap anion have a hydrophilic and a hydrophobic parts. This allows grease to mix with the water when surrounded by the soap anions, and the surface temperature is lowered, and therefore the grease is removed from the cloth. And this is what you need to say about the hydrophilic and the hydrophobic parts, which are the most important. Also mentioning about the soap anion where the surface tension is lowered, and this is how it works. So, esters are made by reacting alcohols with carboxylic acids. Give the name of this acid. This is what it's asking you. So it has 3. As long as it has 3, this means it's prop. And we know it's carboxylic acid, so it's enoic. So the next part of the question, it asks you about ethanoic acid, CH3COOH, reacts with ethanol. Ethyl ethanoate is one of the products formed, and we need to write a balanced equation for this reaction. So first of all, we already know that they give us one of the reactants. Sorry about that. So CH3COOH. Hope you can read that. And then it adds with ethanol, C2H2OH. And then this makes, which you would have to know by heart, sorry, this is really small, CH3COOC2H5. And of course, you'd always have to plus with it of water. Sorry, this is everywhere. But it's really long. But this is really hard for me to write it all out. The next part of the question talks about polyesters. We need to state another use. Now, there's lots of uses. You can be for fibers, for fleeces, for clothing, fabrics, computer mouse, for the mats. You can have as many as you want. So the one I put in my exam, I put clothing as, this is what, like, the one we use, polyester, which reminded me in the exam. So now we're on question 4. So for this question, to make sure the pure sodium chloride from sodium hydroxide solution and a dilute hydrochloric acid, a titration has to be used. And it gives you the reaction, the equation. It says which symbols follow NaCl and H2O to complete the equation. And then you just need to pick one. The answer would be D. This means that NaCl is aqueous and water will always be a liquid in this situation. So this cannot be correct, this cannot be correct, and this cannot be correct. So it's a matter of elimination in this question if you do not know the answer. The next part of the question, it asks you to write the Ionic equation. Now, I particularly found this hard, but with lots of practice, you can get any equation correct. So it would be H plus OH. Now, this is a neutralization reaction, which we'd learn from year 10, equals H2O. Acid plus base equals the metal and the water. So here we just need to have, in the two parts, here is, we have the negative, and we also have, here we have negative and here we have positive, which makes the whole reaction. So this question, it asks you about indicators. So the answer would be methyl orange, and this is when it turns from yellow, let me write this down, yellow to orange. But you could also put phenolphthalein, and this would turn pink colour to colourless, and you would know the reaction, neutralization reaction has occurred. So here we have another maths questions, and the maths questions in the exam are probably the trickiest ones after the 6-mark questions. So here, this is a fairly straightforward one as it's only 2 marks. So sodium hydroxide solution is made up from dissolving 20 grams of sodium hydroxide in water and making the volume solution up to 1 decimeter cubed, and calculate the concentration of sodium hydroxide, NaOH, in the solution in moles dm cubed. So here we have exactly the relative atomic masses for each single part. So what we have to do in the beginning is that we're going to have to add them up. So 1 plus 16 plus 23.0. And this gives us 40. And then we have, this will actually give you 1 mark. So after you have this, now you have to do 20 divided by 40, which gives you 0.5. And 0.5 is the answer, I believe. I just wanted to highlight that it's volume, and we have 20 grams, and then the moles, which we actually had 40. This gives us a concentration, and this is the answer, 0.5. This is a 3-mark question, and it involves lots of maths, so we need to set up this correctly so we can ensure we get the right answer at the end. So it says, in another experiment, titration was carried out, 25 centimeter cubed and 1.5 mole dm cubed. Sodium hydroxide solution, NaOH, was titrated with hydrochloric acid. The volume of the hydrochloric acid required to neutralize sodium hydroxide solution was 30 centimeter cubed. Calculate the concentration of hydrochloric acid, Cl, in mole dm cubed. And then it gives you the equation. So I would write out the equation first, because you might have not a 1-to-1 ratio, so that might be hard. Now we write it out. After I write it out, we need to set this up. So we have concentration, mole, volume, and moles. I was going to write moles, and then I changed my mind where I'm going to write it. So here. So in the beginning, as I wrote before, concentration, volume, and moles. So here we have a lot of information that we could be using. So the first thing that we can use is 30 centimeter cubed. So we always use dm cubed, and here it says 1 dm cubed is 1,000 cm cubed. So the only thing we have to do is we need to convert the units. And the way that we convert the units is that we do 30 divided by 1,000, which gives you 0.03. And here we're also given 25 centimeter cubed, which we'll also need to convert into dm cubed. So if you divide this by 1,000, you get 0.025, and here is the other parts. Now we need to work out the moles, and here I've given it to you. The only thing you need to do is 1.5 times 0.025, and this is because moles equals concentration times volume. So if you times the concentration times the volume equals the moles. Now here you're going to get the same answer because it's 1-to-1 ratio. The question is asking you to find the concentration, and this is where we're looking for X. Now to work this out, the only thing we need to do is the last bit. We're using the same equation, but we're going to rearrange it to get to the concentration. This is moles divided by volume equals concentration. And if we do this, if we do moles, which is 0.0375 divided by 0.03, let me put this in my calculator, and I get 1.25. And this will be answer 1.25. Now we just put this right down here, and this will be 1.25. And that will give you the 4 marks. Now I would say you keep practicing how to do this, especially that this is quite one of the trickier questions in the exam. If you need more help, you can also look, there's another tutorial about this, and you can keep practicing until you know and you're confident with this. But in my opinion, writing the volume, concentration, and moles is the most effective way, and this way we know you haven't missed anything out. Also, make sure that it's actually 1-to-1 ratio. If it's not, you need to either divide or times, and this is another trickier question which you'll be able to find on Shobi to try out. So for question 5, it asks us about some metal objects are electroplated to improve their appearance. Give another reason why some metal objects are electroplated. So for 1 mark, you would only need to say improves resistance to corrosion. So the next part of the question, copper sulfate solution was electrolyzed using copper electrodes. The mass of each electrode was determined before it was placed in the solution. The electrolysis was carried out for a period of time. The electrodes were removed, washed, dried, and their masses were redetermined. The table shows the masses of electrodes before and after electrolysis. So here it gives you the table. So it says mass of impure copper anode, and it gives you 40, the mass of electrode 35, and then it shows the change in mass in between each single one. And it shows it to you. So for this, it says explain these results. The copper ions move from the anode to the cathode. The copper is plated on the cathode, and the copper ions are reduced. There is a difference of 2 grams in the change of mass. So this is 3 marks, so you just need to explain. You can get marks in different ways of explaining it, but this is just a model answer. This part of doing like electrolysis and electroplating always comes up in the exam, so make sure you revise this, especially with the sludge, and you need to know the different names of the anode and the cathode, and what happens with the impure and impure cathodes and anodes, so make sure you revise this. So for this question, we're looking about electrolysis. So it says, in electrolysis, an experiment, oxide ions form oxygen gas. Write the balanced half equation for the reaction. So for this, we are given some of the things that we need. So the first thing that we need, it says at the top. So it is, now you write this down, we have oxygen ions, 2 negative, and then this makes oxygen gas. Of course, we cannot forget our electrons, and the electrons are negatively charged, like this. But when we see these, this is not balanced, so we have to put a 2 here and a 4 here. And now count up. Now this is balanced, and this will get you the 2 marks that you will need. So for this is a 6-mark question, and it says sodium chloride is an ionic compound. It contains sodium ions, Na+, and chloride ions, Cl-. When molten sodium chloride is electrolyzed, sodium metal and chlorine gas are formed. Describe how the sodium ions and the chloride ions in the solid sodium chloride are converted to sodium and chlorine by electrolysis. So this is 6 marks, so you'll need to mention the following things. Now this is taken straight from the mark scheme, because we want you to see exactly what you need to say for the 6 marks. Of course, these are only bullet pointed, but they would need to see it in full sentences. So the first thing, it says, sodium chloride is melted and ions are free to move. This is 1 point. Second point, you need to describe what happens at the cathode and what happens at the anode. So at the cathode, sodium is positive, ions move to the cathode. Sodium metal forms at the cathode. Sodium ions gain electrons to form atoms. This is reduction, and Na plus an electron is Na. So this is the first part of the question. You would need to answer what happens at the cathode. And then here it tells you what happens at the anode. So here they've even given an equation, and this is really important as well. So at the anode, the chloride is negative, so the ions move to the anode. Gas is formed at the anode. Chloride ions lose electrons to form atoms. This is oxidization. Two chlorine atoms combine to make chlorine molecule. And they share electrons. And they've given you another half equation here and here. So this is very important, and remember to actually learn the steps and what happens at the anode and what happens at the cathode. But most importantly, you need to learn, the easiest way I learn it is oil rig. Oxidation is loss, reduction is gain. And this is the key thing that they're looking for, because it says reduction and of course oxidation. And it tells you what happens to the atoms. Now, if you're still stuck on ionic compounds and electrolysis and all these different things, Mr. Parzo has actually made a tutorial about it, and it tells you exactly how to answer these questions, and especially the different ways that you can do this about sodium chloride or any ionic compound. So you make sure you check that out in the description. I just thought it would be important to add some things that they look in the 6 mark question. So now for 1 to 2 marks, they only look for limited description, and they also communicate ideas using simple language and scientific terminology, but this is not actually as good. We are looking at the level 3, 5 to 6 marks at least, that we need 5 or 6. And this will boost your grade up. So they want detailed descriptions for both the anode and the cathode, that was explained in the mark scheme before. And they need at least 5 descriptions or relevant explanations. So you really need to learn all the steps. Of course, you need to have correct spelling and punctuation and grammar used. So you don't want errors, but if there is a few, you'll get 5 marks. And if there's none, you'll definitely get the full 6 marks. And this is really important. We need 6 different things that you need. So we need scientific terminology. We need this. If you don't use this, you'll probably only get 1 or 2 marks, which is not what we're looking for. Make sure in your 6 mark question that you have all the relevant points that you need. Now, sometimes this helps if you write on a different page about what you need to talk about before you actually write it. If you don't have time, this is fine. Okay, just try to remember as much scientific knowledge that you've gained during the year and put it on pen to paper to get the full 6 marks. So for this question, it says hydrogen reacts with oxygen to form water vapor. They've given us the equation. If 200 centimeters of hydrogen react completely with 100 centimeters of oxygen, what is the maximum volume of water vapor formed if all the volumes are measured at the same temperature and pressure? And it gives us another tick box answer. And here are 4 different possibilities. So the answer would be 200. So for this question, we have some things that we can use. So zinc reacts with dilute hydrochloric acid to form zinc chloride and hydrogen. And then we need to calculate the maximum volume for hydrogen formed at room temperature and pressure when you have 13 grams of zinc react completely with excess hydrochloric acid. And then they've given us the relative atomic mass. of zinc, which is 65. And then it tells us the extra information that we need, that 1 mole of gas occupies 24 dm cubed. Now we'll need to use this as well. So what we have to do is we do 13 divided by 65. This is the atomic mass, and then we have the grams that we need for the zinc. And when we get that, we times it by 24. Now if I quickly do this on the calculator, I get 4.8 dm cubed, and this is the answer. This is just simply, we worked out the moles, which is this, and then we times it by 24, and now we have the volume. And that's it. Now to get the moles in this equation, we had to work out what the moles was. So the equation to get moles is mass equals Mr, so the MR times moles. And then we need to rearrange to get the moles. So what we do is mass divided by MR equals moles. So I'm just going to elaborate on this. This is how I got from here, and this gave me the moles, and then you just had times like 24. So for this question, it asks us, in an industry, ammonia is produced with a Haber process. Nitrogen, hydrogen, and then that reversible reaction for ammonia. So what is the source of hydrogen used in the Haber process? So we can tell that it cannot be air, because there's nothing to do with oxygen in the equation given to us. There's no mention of zinc or sulfuric acid, so this cannot be the answer either. If there was anything to do with water, it would have been mentioned in the equation, but it's not. So then we have to know that's natural gas, and that will be the correct answer. For this question, when nitrogen reacts with hydrogen, the amount of ammonia gradually increases until it becomes constant. Explain why the amount of ammonia remains constant. It remains constant because the forward and backward reaction takes place at the same rate. So this is all about dynamic equilibrium. And when you say this is the first mark, it remains constant because of the forward and backward reaction. And the second mark you'd get for saying takes place at the same rate. So this is the last question in the exam, so make sure you have enough time to answer this, as it's 6 marks. So the reaction between nitrogen and hydrogen is exothermic, and it gives you the equation, and we can see this is a reversible reaction. And it asks you, if nitrogen and hydrogen were reacted at 90 pressure and 300 degrees without a catalyst, some ammonia would be formed eventually. In the Haber process, the pressure of 150 atmosphere and pressure of 450 are used in the presence of an ion catalyst. Explain with reasons why the Haber process and conditions are better for the manufacture of ammonia. So here I've taken out what it says exactly in the 6-mark question, but make sure you write this not in bullet points, but in full sentences without any grammatical mistakes. So here, you need to explain, you need to know the conditions for the Haber process, and you'll get the marks. So the first set things you can talk about, in each single one you can get 2 marks, which makes the 6 marks that you need. So, higher pressure. So high pressure gives increased yield. Equilibrium shifts to the right-hand side because a decrease in number of molecules going from left to right. Therefore, a decrease in volume, favored by the increase in pressure. This reaches equilibrium faster, and you get more molecules closer together, so you can get more frequent collisions. So you just need to talk about the higher pressure and what that makes. So if you know this off by heart, you'll find this question very easy. Next thing you can talk about is the high temperature. A high temperature reaches equilibrium faster because the molecules move faster, therefore more frequent collisions. More molecules have more energy, therefore more collisions have required energy, but the yield will be lower because high temperature favors the endothermic reaction. Equilibrium shifts to the right-hand side, which is a decomposition of ammonia. Okay, so this is the 2 things you can talk about, the pressure and the high temperature. You don't need to go in this much detail, but make sure you mention some of the points to get a really good grade. Finally, you can talk about the use of a catalyst. Catalyst causes reaction to reach equilibrium faster. A catalyst increases the rates of both forward and back reactions. This lowers activation energy. Reaction just follows the new pathway, but this does not affect the yield. Equilibrium precision is not affected. So the last thing you have to talk about is the catalyst, and make sure you mention this. If you mention the other 2, you still get the marks, but if you mention the catalyst, you get the rest. And again, if you're confused about the Haber process and the reversible reactions, Ms. Pozzo has also made a video on this topic. Check it out if you can. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe to Ask Jake. Mr. Parslow's channel. And if you have any questions or anything that you would like us to do, make sure you write it in the comments below, and we'll make sure we'll do it. Also, if you have people in your class that are still struggling with this exam paper, make sure you send this to them, as I think it will help them get the grade that they want. Thank you.